Welcome to the Power Curve. I'm Holly Scott. In our podcast, I have the privilege of chatting with accomplished executives regarding their career and decisions made along their path with the hopes of empowering you, our audience, as you navigate your own career trajectory. Today, I'm pleased to have Dr. Louis Profeta as a guest. Dr. Profeta is an emergency physician at St. Vincent's Hospital in Indianapolis, a level 1 trauma center, where he's practiced for almost 3 decades. In addition to his clinical work, he's a recognized public speaker and essayist, including a TED Talks and a book entitled The Patient in Room 9 Says He's God. Dr. Profeta got my attention as a prolific writer on LinkedIn, bringing his unique perspective from the front line of medicine to the largest professional networking site in history. Louis, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes, excellent. So I have to start with something that really caught me. You mentioned that the ER is a mosaic of the human condition. You know, it's every emotion you have. It's every emotion you've had and are going to have, right? And I probably paraphrased that. But I think that that's such a beautiful statement, you know, in terms of where you are today and how you see where you sit in your career. And leading you to that, I'd love to just carve back a bit on the early life, because career starts before we even know what the word means as a child, right? So could you share with us a little bit about your childhood, your upbringing, and perhaps your early impressions of career?
I knew nothing about careers. I pretty much had a job from the time I was 10 on, whether it was cleaning gutters, painting mailboxes, cleaning garages, cutting lawns, every horrible job you could think of, from telemarketing to delivering newspapers to whatever I could do to make a buck. And we didn't have a whole lot of money. I mean, we were comfortable growing up, but I had to work from day one. And I noticed that all the kids that got to go on spring break, or parents had nice cars and nice houses and stuff, that it seemed like their parents were all doctors. So, and that wasn't even my career choice. I was involved in a bad accident when I was 17. I thought I was going to be this Olympic gymnast, and ended up in the hospital with a broken neck. And I was there for months. And my dad goes, "Well, what do you want to do about college?" And I said, I don't care. Whoever wins this basketball game, I'll go there." And Indiana University won the basketball game. So I ended up going to college at Indiana University. And I decided, I think I'll become a doctor. And my high school GPA was not very good. I was not a good student. I was a sub B average student. And if I had to apply to college today, I wouldn't have gotten in. But I just decided in the hospital, I didn't know what I was going to do. Medicine looked like it was a good path to middle class or upper middle class. So that's how I picked my career. I make no bones about it. But it wasn't until I got into medicine itself and really understood what it was that I developed that deep appreciation for how, what an honorable profession, good profession. So I went into medicine for the wrong reasons, but maybe the right reasons. I'm still here and I still love it. So it found me, I guess.
That point is so poignant, because I must say, as often as I'm asked for career counsel on advice, whether individuals are young in career or older in career, they come to me and say, I'm just not sure what I'm passionate about. I want to pivot from this career to something else that I love, something that I want to do. And it's sobering when I ask them, how much money do you want to make? What kind of lifestyle do you want to have? Because at the end of the day, we have to start there. Often the actions and commitment to task start before the passion and motivation to get up and keep doing it every day do, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that we heap way too much criticism on people that want to live a better life than their parents, that is their motivating drive. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Especially if you want to put the work into it and you want to create value for yourself or for your community, and you want to create jobs for other people, man, I think that's incredibly honorable.
Mm-hmm.
And I love people that can do that. And I'll tell you, to the drive to be well off, that takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication. There's nothing wrong with that pursuit, okay, as long as you pursue it honorably. So I have no issue with it whatsoever. I think it's a good question to ask right off the bat.
Right. And money means something different to everyone. It can mean, material things to some individuals, but it also means control, the ability to take care of their family, the ability to If they are the first to go to college, to be able to pay it back to their siblings or help with the load there. So yeah, you're right. It absolutely can be honorable, and you have to be able to put in the work. It's not a complex formula to start, meaning
Right.
you figure out what your life, what you want your life to look like, and how much time you're willing to put into it, and you can create a pretty easy equation there on some buckets that might be worth choosing from, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The key is to be able to find that balance and decide when's enough's enough, and when are you happy.
Hmm.
Uh, and I've been blessed because I found that early on. One of the articles that you may have come across was an article that perhaps I'm most proud of, called "These Four Words That May Offend You May Also Just Save You," that deals with burnout in medicine, but it's also burnout in the job world. Whether what is the purpose of job and what is the purpose of work? I have a good profession. I have an honorable profession that I really enjoy. But when it comes down to it, it's just a means to support my family and take care of the people I love, and to be able to do things I want to do. And that's the goal of work, is be able to support the people you care about around you. So
Yeah, especially in this pandemic era, there's been a tremendous blend and a much influx and ask about separation of life and work and how to get that balance, because so many people are working from home, and it's a continuum. They're putting the kids to bed and going back to work because it's all just a 24/7 cycle. As someone who's had to work through that over the years, how did you get that ability to turn it on, turn it off when needed?
oh boy. Well, number one is I have an incredibly supportive spouse.
Hmm.
I mean, that first and foremost. I mean, she has made sure that the house becomes a respite for me. That you can't leave the horrible environment of the emergency department, where people are dying, and the human misery, and then come home, and then be faced with with problems at home. And she made sure that this became sort of a sanctuary for me. And I have to all praise to her. I mean, that's why I've been able to do this job as long as I can. And then just simple things like, maybe we're not the traditional parents. And I've joked about this in an article I wrote about midnight pizzas. I mean, I used to come home at 3 o'clock in the morning with a frozen pizza, make it, cook it, and wake the kids up. When they were 6, 7 years old in their pajamas, they'd come down and eat pizza with me. It was the first opportunity I had to see them, and my wife had no issue with it. And so they weren't the most wide awake kids at school the next day, but to be able to steal some of those precious times and those precious moments, man, you can't be regimented when you have this job like we do. You have to sort of have a fluidity to parenting that allows you to embrace the beauty of being a father and a mother. And if you have a spouse that allows you to do that, man, that's the way to go. That's what it's all about.
Mm. The number one career decision you can make is who you choose to spend your life with.
Absolutely, without a doubt. Without
Mhm.
a doubt.
Yeah, and for those who are navigating it alone, making sure that you create your own sanctuary, whether it's home or whatever you involve yourself with, you have to have the time dedicated to you and your own personal rest and reward, and whatever that looks like. That becomes tremendously important. That
And
becomes
I always
true.
joke. I always joke to our younger medical students that aren't married. I said, don't find somebody who's like you. Find someone who likes you. There's a big difference. You know,
That
I,
is
I am so glad I married somebody who's like me. you know?
same here. Same here. No, your spouse, your sig other, they have to balance you. There's got to be a harmony there. If you have the same aspirations and drive, man, talk about friction, right? There can be some real kick up of dirt there. So yeah, no, that's so true. The family grounding you and being able to shut it off, that's something that individuals who are driven and committed to developing a career, that is something that's common. It's a challenge. It's a challenge to get there. When you can find your pocket of sanity, whether it's meditation, whether it's the grill and the scotch in the evenings, or sitting with your spouse and holding hands, or just whatever it might be, all those things are are glimpses of where you can really find that peace, that peaceful place. That peaceful place. I want just to go back because I was fascinated by this. You had a lot of great stories. Your book was just everyone was better than the other. I absolutely loved it. And the one that I thought was an interesting peek into the future of Lewis was when you talk about your friendship with Scotty, and you talk about how special he was to you. And one of the comments that really stood out to me was you said, "I'd been looking for a reason to come up against this kid, this said bully that was picking on Scotty, ever since you laid eyes on him. I was in essence a tough guy with a conscience. Everything had to be a battle. I used to tell my parents that I never started a fight when I actually started them all. I just didn't throw the first punch." I thought that was really interesting because as an emergency physician, you're on the bleeding edge. And that personality to be there and be comfortable being extremely uncomfortable most of the time appears to go hand in hand. And that's an early glimpse of that. So I am curious.
I'd never thought of that, but you're exactly right.
That
Oh my gosh.
jumped off the page at me, and I thought, you know what? I, as well as my older son, we tend to we don't throw the first punch, but we're often right there, right? We're right there pushing the cause. So in that, as you reflect on that and you think about you as a child, was that organic? Was that were your parents like this? Were you an anomaly in your family, or is this something that where did this come from?
My probably my mom. I mean, my mom was she's still around, but yeah, probably from her. I don't want to say she was a troublemaker. I mean, she was a good person, but always finding problems, and that's actually a habit that I've had to break as I've gotten older. But it's hard to explain to people that the more I don't want to say violent, but the busier the emergency department is, the more catastrophe we have going on, the more comfortable I get. My brain just works well in that environment. It's always worked well in situations of calamity or turmoil. It's almost like it needs that external, that epinephrine surge around me in order for it to work to its full capacity. So I feel really comfortable in really uncomfortable situations that most people go, "Oh my gosh, how can you do that?" I'd have a horrible time sitting at a desk job. I wouldn't be able to do it. And so it's just how I'm built. I think I've always been that way. I've gravitated toward drama. But at the same time, I don't feel like I'm a dramatic person. I'm very sort of level-headed, I think easygoing now. But I've grown into that. I'm just comfortable in that environment. And I think most ER docs are. They all sort of operate on a different frequency.
Yeah, I would say it's gravitating towards problems you can solve, not necessarily gravitating towards problems.
Right.
I see you going after being, hey, to use the term first responder, right? You're right there to be there to help solve that issue, and I think that's a pretty substantial trait for a future doctor.
And I think we also, going out and expanding beyond in terms of my writing, I think most of us understand that most of the problems out in society are fixable problems. When you deal every day in problems that have no, solution to them, because many of them don't. I mean, we tell people some of the most horrible news in the world that, most everything else is fixable. So when I have friends that tell me about their issues or a problem going on in their life, I had a kid that had cancer, had leukemia, was in the hospital for 7 months. And I just look at him and say, "Hey, listen, it's not cancer. So whatever else is fixable. Pretty much if you don't have a terminal illness, whatever else has a solution to it. It just may take time to find a solution." So I'm sort of, even keel about those kind of issues. And I think more people need to be. The sky's not always falling.
Yes. So true. It's so true. So as you developed your career, as you moved along, at what point did you start writing? What point did you start speaking? Was it the speaking first, the engagements? What happened first, and what brought you to that point?
Well, I had written a little when I was younger. I was in a creative writing class in college, And my professor discovered something that I had written in class. He submitted for publication back in '88, and I was an undergrad, and the first thing I ever wrote was published in the most prestigious journal in medicine, the Journal of American Medical Association. It was about sort of my reflections of being a spinal recovery victim, breaking my neck in a fall. And so I had written, and then I had written my book, The Patient Room 9 Says He's God, and it had done okay. And it wasn't until I had written this quirky little article called Your Kid and My Kid Aren't Playing in the Pros that was published in an online, it was a Nouveau magazine, which is one of these garbage little newspapers that sit outside of a grocery store and offers 2-for-1 sushi specials and stuff like this. And they didn't even publish it in their papered version. They put it in their Facebook link, and I think like 7 people read that that Facebook page. And a week later, 1 million people had read the article, and it was being talked about on ESPN and Fox News Radio and sports radio, and then end up winning an award from Society of Professional Journalism. And then Chip Cutter, who was with LinkedIn, discovered it, asked me if I'd write an article about Ebola. And during that time, my son had just been diagnosed with cancer, was at Sloan Kettering Cancer Hospital in New York. And I explained to him, I said I wasn't doing much writing. I had taken a leave of absence because my son was critically ill and we were in New York City. And he apologized up and down and said, hey, we're headquartered in the Empire State Building. Is there anything we can do? And I said, yeah, donate blood. So he showed up with people, from his family and stuff, and at work at the hospital, and he donated blood to my kid. And I said, okay, I'll write your article. And I wrote an article called What Scares Me More Than Ebola. And it was about how, this was in 2014, about how we were not prepared for a viral pandemic. Okay, that we were completely unprepared in this country, and that we need to worry about an epidemic online with Spanish flu, and that if one hit in our lifetime, would probably kill 500,000 Americans. Now, I'm not sure if that came to fruition, but I think it did.
It did.
It just Spanish flu. So and that article blew up. And then Chip took me out to dinner, and he said, you're a really good writer, and you should probably think about what you want to do in terms of writing, because, and I said, well, I don't want to write just to be controversial. I want to write to make a change. So it has always been my mission statement, is to write about things that I thought were important, that would help the world to become a little bit better, make people look at common things in an uncommon way, or bring attention to issues that people may have not thought about in the past. And that's always been sort of my modus operandi, and it's worked for me. And as people started to read these articles, more and more people started to ask me, hey, would you come and talk? Would you come and speak on this subject matter, that subject matter? And then sort of the speaking stuff has exploded. And I was booked solid pre-COVID. Obviously, a lot of that has fallen off the wayside, but I still love, that's probably my favorite part now.
Did you ever get into the theatrics? When I saw your TED Talks, I thought, man, you've got a dramatic side to you, and I assume that comes from your authentic experience, but you're so comfortable in that setting.
I mean, I was in a school play when I was in grade school. That's about it. I was in choir, but I was horrible. Wow. I was the last trumpet and band. The guy one or two notes.
Well, no. You're great to watch, and you're a natural on stage. But I will tell you, Mike, your written word is my favorite. The way you write and your style is it's fantastic. So it was a LinkedIn tap on the shoulder then that really after the book was written, and it was a request to put more information into the public domain. And did they ask for some kind of cadence with that, or was that something?
I didn't even know what LinkedIn was. It was, you're talking about 2014. And I had and like I said, he had read my article on kids and sports and asked if I'd write an article on Ebola. And so I opened up, one of my kids explained that they thought it was like Facebook for business people. So I said, okay, I opened an account, and then I wrote this article, and the article blew up. And I think at that time, it's one of the top 10 most read articles in history of LinkedIn coming out of the gate. And what was interesting to them, and what I understood later on, is, I wasn't a celebrity. So when you looked at the articles that were being written by Bill Gates and Mark Cuban, and this article in terms of readership was right up there. And he said, it's really unusual to come out of the gate and write something that 400,000 people will read. He goes, and then it was republished in magazines all over the world. And then a short time thereafter, a couple of years later, I'm one of the most followed people on LinkedIn. So I don't know how it just sort of happened. And it's this sort of weird organic celebrity that just happened. I don't know. I guess I'm just saying the right stuff, and I'm being honest, and not meaning to be controversial, and I'm trying to spread a positive message, and I think people want that.
They certainly do, and it's taken what you do with patient care, meaning that one-to-one ratio of you can treat one patient at a time, and now you have the opportunity to impact and improve millions of people by your reading. And articles like the one you wrote with your kid and my kid aren't going pro, right? Well, I think it resonates with an incredibly wide audience. So not only are the parents sitting there with thinking, okay, this is a wake-up call, but as you had mentioned, grandparents are leaning in saying, let's spend time as a family again. Dinner conversation shouldn't be happening on the soccer field, and let's get back to basics. And if there's one blessing of the COVID time, that was a big wake-up call even for my personal family with two boys at home. We were running too much, getting back to the basics. And so your message as you say just an ER doctor, which I think is funny because you're nothing but a just anywhere, but that message brings such validity and authenticity to any reader and anyone, and I can see why it spans popularity across so many different audiences.
Well, when you go back and you look at that article, I could write a book on the emails I got from people in response to that article. Some of them were incredibly vicious, nasty responses, but the vast majority thanked me. That said, this article saved their lives. But what was heartbreaking about that article was how many emails I got from grandparents that said, we do not know our grandkids, that travel sports has stolen our grandchildren away from us. They know nothing about us. We cannot sit in the hot sun. We can't walk across these parking lots to these bleachers. We're too old to engage in this. And we literally have been robbed of the relationship, the same type of relationship we had with our parents and grandparents, we do not have with our grandchildren. And this happened over and over. And then parents, siblings who had other siblings that didn't show up for their own weddings or for their kids, events because of a travel sport event, or people that didn't show up, kids that didn't show up for their grandparents' funerals. I mean, literally, because of an important travel soccer or lacrosse tournament. I mean, it was just mind-boggling to me. And I found an incredible degree of sadness. And granted, I had kids that played those sports too, that did some travel, but not to that extent. And that's sort of where I was leaning about how that you may find utility in this, but there's an incredible amount of utility in having a part-time job as opposed to, being on a travel lacrosse team. There's an incredible amount of utility to cutting grass, to doing chores around the house, that you don't need. Not every bit of teamwork revolves around team play. Okay. And a lot of the times it's team responsibility. And I think we've lost that. We've got sucked into this, and COVID in a lot of ways, and I think I wrote an article about that, has brought us back. It's amazing how many of these parents would sort of whisper, that, man, I'm glad I don't have to travel right now. I didn't realize how nice it is just to be at home with my kids. And I think that it has brought us back to that a little bit. And I think that's sort of wondrous.
Exactly. Well, another very powerful common theme in everything that I've read about you is that you find God, you find faith, you find that in so many different places, right? So, and I like you in the COVID situation, I feel like there has been this underlying awakening and return to what our foundation needs to be in terms of a real balance and a real focus on what's most important. Our world has gotten so noisy and so chaotic. And you have 3 boys, I have 2 boys. It's raising them in this environment where there's information coming at you every moment that you have to quickly decipher, is this valuable or not valuable, valuable or not value. It creates this transitory mindset where everything is a transaction and there's no stickiness and there's no relationships are not as deep and not as meaningful, or we lose the ability to do that if we're not careful, right? So sometimes pulling back on the busyness and going back to these fundamentals can be critical, because coming back to work and how we make a living, we don't go to work every day and have everything be absolutely right. We have to hang in there, and we have to slug it out most days to have those wins. And if we go into it with this transaction, immediate gratification mindset where things are shifting so quickly and we're not able to maintain that stickiness and hold on to it, something's really lost there. And it starts with our foundation at home. It really does.
It also, I think a lot of it too is how we identify ourselves. And that's why, you sort of brought up this joke about when I put on my LinkedIn profile, it says just an ER doc. That came from that article about burnout in medicine, when a person said to me, "I'm just a chef." I said, "Well, I'm just an ER doc." And if you don't let your job and your occupation define who you are, if that becomes who you are, if I'm an ER doc as opposed to I'm a father and a husband, then the problems become personalized. So the problems you have at work become a personal attack on you about your identity. So my identity is not the fact that I'm an emergency physician. My identity is the fact that I'm father of Max, Eli, Zach, and husband to Cheryl, and so who just happens to be an ER doc. And I think that we have to try to separate ourselves out from our profession and recognize our identity is really who we are under the walls of our home and not in the cubicle of our office. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good start.
It is a good start, and it's important to reflect on that, and especially again in with the inbound requests I have on a day-to-day basis. It's I need to have my value. I need to be passionate. I need to really go all in, and that's tremendous. And there are people who are all in and can move mountains. However, it still takes 100 to that 1 ratio that's going to make it happen at scale. So, all of us in some fashion can be on the front line and can be that right at the tip of the spear, but all of us in some fashion have to be a cog in the wheel as well. And knowing when we play that part and when we can dial it up and dial it down, therein lies the challenge, right? And therein lies the ability to step back and to see real value in what you put out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you plan on writing another book?
People ask me that all the time. I don't think so. I mean, publishing is different nowadays. I've got articles, Holly, that have been read by 20 million people. I wrote an article called "I'll look at your Facebook profile before I tell your mother you're dead." These articles have been read like 20 million times. I mean, I'm never going to sell a book that has 20 million reads. And so I'd rather just put individual chapters and articles out there for the world to digest. I don't need to get paid for them. I don't care. I might have a job and just see how I can influence people. Mm-hmm. And I like doing that better. I mean, it's sort of like I've been there, done that, got the shirt, mm-hmm. kind of thing, wrote the book. I've done a TED Talk, but I just like writing articles that resonate with people, sharing them. I've got a big enough social media following that everything I write goes viral to some degree. And I enjoy that more than anything else. And I like speaking. I like corporate speaking and speaking in college campuses and talking to college kids. Man, I love that kind of stuff. That's great.
Yeah, the kids would call you an influencer, I mean, that's the word, right? Used to be a writer or speaker. Now you're an influencer.
Yeah, careful what you ask for.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it goes back to, the point I made before we started is we want to keep it in digestible clips, right? People like to read things. The essays, the articles are perfect because they're easily digested. They're quick reads. You move on. So now I can understand and appreciate, your position there. So the speaking, I know you're big on, and you're growing. You've got a growing following now on the professional side. Tell us a little bit more about that, the corporate speaking work that you do, because I think that that's really interesting.
Well, a lot of people, like we were talking about at the very beginning, the emergency department is a window into every problem and every issue within society. It is the only place in America where every single facet of society, whether we're talking uber rich or uber poor or profoundly disabled, or you can have a crack addict next to a Fortune 500 executive. It's the only room, even in the hospital, where every single facet of medicine comes together. So we're a window into all the issues and all the real problems that society has. We know we're sort of that canary in the coal mine, that alarm clock that recognizes all the issues months, years before they ever come to fruition within mainstream media or the public consciousness. So if you can bring that kind of awareness to sort of the corporate world and be able to talk about issues that deal with tragedy and issues that deal with hopes and aspirations and how the world really moves at the organic individual level, it allows people a better ability to, I think, take stock of their own sort of lives and how they function within the world parameter. And so I love it. I love going and talking to some of these events. I speak on everything from spirituality to end of life care to I have a talk called 3 Lessons that deals with how to expand your sphere of influence, how to see beauty in the everyday, and that every tragedy has potential to hide a miracle. And I take people, organizations through how that looks within the emergency setting and how they can extrapolate it to their own sort of work environment or work culture.
It's so relevant too, because in every organization, small or large, you're bringing together individuals that have one common goal, but that goal, outside of that goal, you have such differences, and they're all humans, yet they come from such very different points in their life, and being able to translate a tragedy to a beauty, that's universal, right? And being able to have power through an incredibly different situation and allow it to allow you to walk away with that badge of courage or those scars that'll be meaningful in another fight somewhere, that those translate across every business, across every walk of life, whatever the business might be focused in.
Sure.
Yeah.
And well, also that common thread, though, too, is not the welfare of the business. The common thread is the welfare of the individual. Is how to take care of your family, how to live a good life, be able to feed yourself, provide insurance, education for your family. That's the unifying goal.
Mm-hmm.
And more industries that recognize that is the what is at the forefront of every person that they hire. And then they create a culture that allows them to experience that. One of the things that I am really proud of in our group, and we have about 120 doctors in my group. When I started, I think I was like the 6th doctor, and now I'm the old man, is that we have made a real concerted effort to get our docs off to go to their kids, everything from recitals to baseball games to whatever. So our docs will come in and cover for just a couple hours, 2-3 hours, to break away, to allow people to break away to go to special events that they would otherwise miss, or kids' recital or school play in the middle of the afternoon. We are really aware of how important that is to maintaining the sanity of the self. And man, I love that. And I wish more businesses would adopt that kind of model to allow their lower level employees to be able to break away for those special moments, because that's what they'll remember all their lives. And I would love to see that more family focused culture in all of industry.
Well, that's what people long for, and that's why people make career changes on a day-to-day basis. It's money is secondary. It's all lifestyle and the challenge ahead and what it's going to afford them in order to do for themselves, for their family. So yeah, you're absolutely right. They're going to remember that their boss said, "Hey, go watch your kid's ball game." They're not going to remember the $2,500 bonus they got. It's just not going to happen. So yeah, that's really poignant. And I'm happy to hear that happening in the medical community, especially when I know you're pretty tight on available physicians, and you're all, especially now more so than ever. I intentionally am staying away from COVID because I'm sure you're talking, talked about it so much you're sick of it. But at the end of the day, I know that your hours there are precious, and allowing people to get the reprieve they need and go spend some time. That's going to pay itself off in spades.
Yeah, in my community, even my neighborhood has been unbelievable. We sent out a notice about how the morale of all our nurses and doctors have been plummeting, and people in our community have been sending pizzas and cookies and snacks and everything that you can imagine to our emergency department, and it's just an incredible blessing to see how the community of Indianapolis has responded to the morale of their local emergency personnel and have stepped up to help out, help lift their spirits. It's incredible.
Well, that again, using your superhero power, right? So that call to action got my attention. I put some work on my boys' shoulders, and they've been collecting cards and letters and art down here in Palm Beach County, and we've got a few schools that are putting together letters and all kinds of things to deliver to the community hospitals, because you know what, if we can do anything, my goodness.
When I put that out on LinkedIn, I couldn't even tell you how many docs I got reaching out to me from other hospitals around the country, say, hey, we had people that have brought stuff to our emergency department. Thank you, on basis of something that you posted. And that's what I mean about expanding your sphere of influence. If you can expand people's understanding and put a sort of a bug in their ear to make the world around them a little better, that's what I'm trying to use my writing for. So
it's working. It's working. It's great stuff. It's great stuff. Well, I know we're getting short on time, but I am really curious, what with individuals young in their career and considering medicine, what's your advice? I'm 20.
Same advice that I got. Don't do it. Run. Go into banking. Go into real estate. Do something else. Not do this job. You better understand what you're getting into. This is an extremely hard job. Okay, it's riddled with emotion, and just because you like people and you want to help people, that is not enough. Okay, that is nowhere near enough. You need to have an incredible degree of resiliency. You have to be really tough skinned. This is the physicality of this work is unmeasurable, and you better have a really good idea of what you're getting into. It's not enough just to want to hold somebody's hand, be with them, and listen to them. That's not what medicine is anymore. There's a corporate aspect to it. There is a bureaucracy aspect to it. There's a physicality to it. So you need to really sit and talk with other physicians to get an idea of what this job really means. I don't mean just somebody who's been in practice for 2 or 3 years. You need to talk to people who've been in practice for 15, 20 years. That would be first and foremost. And if it doesn't sound, after talking to them, like something that you want to do, don't do it. Run for the hills. Go do something else. There's plenty of ways of helping people without going into this field.
Yeah, and you've stayed with so much experience. I'm sure at some point you had decisions to make around, do I go into more of a management track and get less hands-on, less patient touch? Yet you have stayed close to the patient, even though you give this cautionary advice about how hard it is. I'm the oldest doctor now, or I will be soon, in our group. And last year, I think I worked the second most clinical hours of anybody in my group. And I still love it. I'm not burned out. I'm getting there, but it's mostly because I'm just old and fat, and but I still love it, man. I still love going to work. I love taking care of people. I love the environment. And I'll be one of those people that'll work till I'm 90. I'll be working at Home Depot if I'm not here. I'm going to be in the hardware store. I'm going to be working at deli counter. You're going to look at me one day and go, hey, wait a minute. I think I read something you wrote. I'm going to be getting 1 pound of pastrami or 2. But I'll be an old 90 years old, hopefully, God willing, and I'll still be working. I'll be that guy at Walmart or wherever. I like it. I like people. I like that environment. So I'm not going anywhere. I will hope to be doing the same, and I'll trip over my walker to come say hello to you and make sure my readers don't fall off and everything else.
In Palm Beach County.
Exactly. I'm in the right place for it, let me tell you. So your boys, any of them wired for medicine?
Oh, not at all. I got one in real estate. I've got one who is in trucking logistics, and I've got one who is a cryptocurrency analyst for a hedge fund.
Excellent, excellent. So they're diverse and all over.
No, no, but
Wow.
they have enough tabletop discussions that they always. One of them lives with a fourth-year medical student that they always weigh in on the test and stuff like that. So, oh, my dad will tell you that's not the answer.
That's great. Well, you have such a close family. That's wonderful, and I'm sure that that's keeping you sane through all of this time. And man, this has been great. So, just last for fun, anything you're in your personal time, you listening to, you doing, what keeps you grounded, sane, relaxed?
We cook. We have a pretty expansive garden. We grow everything imaginable. The boys and I all fish. We're outdoor people. We hunt too. You know, we're active in our community. I just it's mountain bike, a little bit of everything. I try to be outdoors every single day. I spend almost all my waking minutes outdoors if I'm not riding. So
That's terrific. Well, Lewis, it's been amazing speaking with you. As I shared with you before we went on camera here, you are my first non-industry guest, and I've enjoyed it as I knew I would. And the reason that I invited you here is because you have taken your expertise and brought value to the greater scale through your writing, your work, your videos, your essays, everything. It's truly enlightening and magical, and we appreciate it. And there's so much crossover for individuals of all backgrounds from a career perspective to get some glimmers of opportunity and light. So many thanks for being with us today.
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'm Holly Scott. Thanks for joining us on The Power Curve.